Starting off at number 20, the longest singles match won. Dan Evans, in the 2024 US Open's first round, Britain's Dan Evans and Russia's Karen Khachanov battled in what became the longest match in tournament history, a grueling 5 hours and 35 minutes of relentless tennis. Evans dropped the first set in a tiebreak, clawed back to win 2 more tight breakers, then stumbled in the fourth as Khachanov forced a deciding set. Down 0-4 in the fifth, Evans mounted an incredible comeback, winning 6 straight games to seal the match 6-7, 7-6, 7-6, 4-6, 6-4. It was a war of endurance, mental toughness, and pure willpower, surpassing the previous record held by Stefan Edberg at 5 hours and 25 minutes, a record that Evans finally broke after 30 years, sliding into number 19. Youngest men's champion, Pete Sampras. Imagine being too young to legally drink in the US, and yet old enough to lift its most prestigious tennis trophy. Pete Sampras, in 1990, did exactly that. At just 19 years and 1 month, the lanky kid from California dismantled Ivan Lendl, John McEnroe, and Andre Agassi, all in straight sets. Lendl was an 8-time Slam champion, McEnroe a 4-time USO winner, Agassi the sport's flashiest rising star. Pete's serve was already hitting 120 miles per hour, his volleys crisp, his demeanor ice cold. This wasn't a fluke. It was the birth of a 14-major career. The press called him the silent assassin. And here's the kicker: no man since has been younger. Carlos Alcaraz came close at 19 years, 4 months in 2022. But the record still belongs to Pete. But what if we told you another US Open champion won after most pros had already retired? That's where we're heading next. Dropping in at number 18, oldest women's champion, Flavia Pennetta. By 2015, Flavia Pennetta had been grinding on tour for nearly 2 decades, mostly under the radar. She'd been a solid top 20 player, even reached a US Open quarterfinal in 2011, but never sniffed a Slam final. Then came that magical fortnight in New York. At 33, she upset 2 seeds in week 1. At 35 years and 4 months, she blasted past Petra Kvitova in the quarters, crushed Simona Halep in the semis, and found herself in an all-Italian final against childhood friend Roberta Vinci. Fresh from that Serena Williams upset, under the Arthur Ashe spotlight, Pennetta's aggressive returns and flat forehands carved through Vinci's slices for a 7-6, 6-2 win. The stadium roared, but then came the twist. In her victory speech, she stunned the tennis world by announcing her retirement. She left not just as champion, but as the oldest woman ever to win the US Open. And if you think longevity is impressive, wait until you see who showed up at Flushing Meadows more times than anyone else. Taking number 17, most tournaments played, Jimmy Connors. Jimmy Connors didn't just play tennis, he lived on court. From his debut in 1970 to his final bow in 1992, he played the US Open 22 times. Think about that. More than 2 decades at the top, across 3 different surfaces: grass, 1970 to 74, hard true clay, 1975 to 77, and Deco turf hard courts from 1978 onward. And he wasn't just filling the draw. Connors reached 5 finals, winning in 74, 76, 78, and 82. His swagger, fist pumps, and running 2-handed backhands became Flushing Meadows' signature style. The most famous chapter? His 1991 run to the semifinals at age 39, where he beat Aaron Krickstein in that unforgettable 5-set Labor Day epic. The crowd's epic chants of Connors' name are still remembered as one of the loudest roars in tennis history. No man has matched his 22 appearances, and in today's physically demanding era, maybe no one ever will. But how many matches can one player win at the US Open? Connors didn't just play the most, swinging into number 16. Most men's matches won. Jimmy Connors didn't just show up at the US Open, he won a lot. Over his 22 appearances, he racked up an astonishing 89 match victories, more than any other man in tournament history. His first win came in 1970 when he was just 18, and his last in 1992 at age 39. This wasn't padding stats in early rounds. Connors beat legends like Bjorn Borg, Ivan Lendl, and John McEnroe under the Ashe lights. The 4 titles, 1974, 1976, 1978, 1982, tell only part of the story. The rest is in his relentless fight during second weeks, his lung-busting rallies, and his iron will to turn matches around. In 1991, even ranked number 174, he stormed to the semis. 5 wins in one magical run, Today's stars would need 15+ years of deep US Open runs to get close. And speaking of young, how about winning the whole thing before you can legally drink? Next up at number 15, youngest women's champion, Tracy Austin. Arthur Ashe Stadium didn't exist yet, and a shy, braces-wearing teenager was dismantling legends on the old Louis Armstrong court. Tracy Austin, just 16 years and 9 months old, stunned the tennis world in 1979 by taking out Chris Evert in the semifinals, ending Evert's incredible 31-match US Open win streak, and then beating Martina Navratilova in the final. Her crisp, flat ground strokes and laser focus belied her age, and her victory remains unmatched in US Open history for sheer youthfulness. Even Serena Williams, Maria Sharapova, and Coco Gauff couldn't touch that mark. Austin would win again in 1981, but injuries cut her career short, leaving this record as one of the sport's most enduring symbols of precocious brilliance. But if you think youth was impressive, wait until you hear about someone who built a dynasty in pairs on these courts. Owning number 14, most doubles titles. Martina Navratilova didn't just win in doubles, she owned it. Across her glittering career, she lifted the US Open Women's Doubles trophy 9 times between 1977 and 1990, partnering with legends like Pam Shriver. Their partnership alone produced 4 straight titles, 1983 to 1986. Her serve and volley artistry, uncanny net anticipation, and fearless poaching made her nearly unbeatable in the format. Doubles in the 80s was fiercely competitive, featuring multi-slam winners across the net. But Navratilova's court coverage was a masterclass in efficiency. In total, she claimed 177 doubles titles worldwide, a professional tennis record that still stands. In the modern era, where singles stars rarely commit to doubles long-term, this US Open benchmark may never be touched. And while Martina's dominance came with a partner, the next record was all about pure singles supremacy from 2 of the sport's most ruthless champions. Coming in at number 13, most consecutive US Open appearances, Feliciano Lopez. Some players are remembered for titles, others for epic matches. Feliciano Lopez is remembered for always showing up. From 2001 to 2022, the Spanish serve and volley stylist walked through the US Open gates 21 years in a row without missing a single edition. Through surface speed changes, racket tech revolutions, and 3 generations of opponents, Feliciano kept qualifying directly into the main draw. His fitness, adaptability, and love for the sport allowed him to outlast rivals who had long retired. While he never lifted the singles trophy, Lopez's streak is a masterclass in durability, proof that just being there, year after year, is its own rare achievement. In an era of injuries, ranking volatility, and packed calendars, this mark may be as untouchable as any title count. At number 12, most consecutive men's final, Roger Federer. From 2004 to 2009, Roger Federer made the US Open final every single year. 6 straight appearances without a single semifinal stumble. This wasn't in a weak field. This was peak men's tennis, with rivals like Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, Andy Murray, and Lleyton Hewitt all gunning for him. Federer's run began with a straight sets demolition of Hewitt in 2004 and ended with a 5-set heartbreaker to Juan Martín del Potro in 2009. Across those finals, he collected 5 titles in a row and compiled a near-perfect New York aura. Walking onto Arthur Ashe Stadium felt like stepping into his house. The only thing harder than making 6 finals in a row? Winning nearly every match you ever play here, which is exactly where the next record takes us. Cracking into number 11, highest win percentage, Chris Evert. Chris Evert's US Open career record reads like a misprint. 101 wins, just 6 losses. Her 94.6% win rate is the highest for any player, man or woman, in tournament history, over 19 years of appearances. Evert's game, built on relentless baseline consistency, surgical placement, and unshakable mental control, was perfectly suited to the DecoTurf courts. She reached at least the semifinals in all 19 of her US Opens, an achievement unmatched in any slam. Her dominance spanned surfaces too. She won titles on clay, grass, and hard courts as the USO changed its footing. But while Evert's precision was a slow burn suffocation, our next story is pure power. A streak that turned New York into a one-man Federer festival. Powering in at number 10, most consecutive men's match wins. Roger Federer from 2004 to 2009. Federer went 27 matches without a single US Open loss. That's 4 consecutive titles, followed by a run to the 2009 final. spanning over 1,800 days of perfection on New York hard courts. In that streak, he beat 12 different top 10 players, including Andy Roddick, Lleyton Hewitt, and Novak Djokovic 3 times. His most dominant moment? The 2007 final, dismantling Djokovic 7-6, 7-6, 6-4 in a masterclass of composure under pressure. Even the crowd began expecting him to win before the first serve was struck. But if Federer was a force of nature, our next record belongs to someone who made making finals look as inevitable as sunrise. Holding strong at number 9, most consecutive women's finals, Chris Evert. Between 1975 and 1983, Evert reached 9 straight US Open finals on 3 different surfaces. That means, for nearly a decade, fans arriving in September could pencil her name into the championship match before the draw was made. She faced legends like Martina Navratilova, Hana Mandlikova, and Tracy Austin, adapting her baseline artistry to grass, clay, and eventually hard courts. Winning 4 of those finals, she still set a standard for longevity and consistency unmatched in the women's game. And speaking of unmatched, the next story takes us back to an era when one man ruled before tennis even went global. At number 8, most men's titles overall, including the pre-Open era, Richard Sears, Bill Larned, and Bill Tilden. Before tennis became a truly global sport, 3 Americans carved their names into US Open history. Richard Sears dominated from 1881 to 1887, winning 7 straight titles, all without ever losing a match at the tournament. Bill Larned matched the total in the early 1900s, even serving in the Spanish-American War between victories. Then came Bill Tilden, who not only won 7 titles, 1920 to 1925, 1929, but transformed tennis into a spectator sport, bringing charisma and strategy to center stage. Their achievements came in smaller draws, often with fewer than 50 entrants, but the control they exerted over their eras remains unmatched. Yet as dominant as they were, the next record involves back-to-back-to-back-to-back. Taking number 7, most consecutive women's titles won Helen Jacobs and Chris Evert. Helen Jacobs first set the bar in the 1930s, claiming 4 straight championships, 1932 to 1935, during a golden age for women's tennis. Nearly half a century later, Chris Evert matched the feat from 1975 to 1978. But she did it while the tournament surface changed twice, from clay to hard courts. That meant adapting her style year after year while still staying unbeatable in finals. In modern tennis, with its depth and constant upsets, this 4-year dominance feels almost untouchable. From here, we trade streaks for sheer firepower, and a record that still echoes through Arthur Ashe Stadium every time an ace booms. Smashing into number 6, most aces in a US Open match, Ivo Karlovic. On September 4, 2009, Ivo Karlovic, the 6'11" Croatian serving giant, turned a US Open second-round match into a pure power showcase. Facing Taiwan's Yen Sun Liu, Karlovic blasted an unbelievable 71 aces, a record that still stands today. To put that in perspective, that's an ace almost every other serve across 5 grueling sets. His serve regularly clocked above 140 miles per hour, with pinpoint precision that left Liu often frozen at the baseline. Despite Karlovic's serving masterclass, Liu's defensive grit earned him the upset in a final set tiebreak. The match lasted 4 hours, and the sheer number of unreturned serves still boggles the mind in an era of improved return games. And while Karlovic's weapon was his serve, the next record celebrates someone who mastered everything on court and did it all in one magical year. Sliding in at number 5, Triple Crown in 1 year, Margaret Court in 1970, Margaret Court achieved something so rare that no player, male or female, has repeated it at the US Open, winning singles, doubles, and mixed doubles in the same year. That's 21 match victories in just 2 weeks, all on the unforgiving grass courts of Forest Hills. Court's singles title that year was part of her calendar year Grand Slam, the last woman to do so in singles, but adding both doubles titles elevated her feat into mythical territory. Modern tennis schedules, with players specializing in 1 or 2 formats, make this nearly impossible today. Back then, Court played with relentless efficiency, often wrapping matches in under an hour to conserve energy. But dominance over a fortnight is one thing. How about ruling an entire decade in New York? That's exactly where we're headed next. At number 4, most women's titles won overall, Molla Bjurstedt Mallory. Between 1915 and 1926, Molla Bjurstedt Mallory, a Norwegian-born player with an unshakable baseline game, dominated the US championships like no other woman in history. She won 9 singles titles in just 12 years, including 4 in a row from 1915 to 1918. What makes this even more astonishing? She started her US Open career at age 31, in an era when most athletes were considered past their prime. Mallory's style was built on relentless consistency and deep, accurate ground strokes rather than flashy winners, frustrating even the most aggressive opponents. She famously defeated Suzanne Lenglen, the French superstar, in 1921, the only time Lenglen ever lost at a Grand Slam. Mallory's record still stands untouched, and in today's era of global competition, it's hard to imagine anyone coming close. Yet if Mallory's greatness came from patient precision, the next record came from pure, raw velocity, rocketing to number 3, fastest serve in US Open history, Andy Roddick. In 2004, Andy Roddick unleashed a serve at the US Open that still sends shockwaves through tennis history. 152 miles per hour, 244.6 kilometers per hour. Measured on the stadium radar gun, this wasn't just fast, it was a projectile. The ball left Roddick's racket and reached his opponent in less than 0.4 seconds. That single serve cemented his status as one of the sport's most feared servers, complementing the blistering pace with pinpoint placement. While other players have come close, like Taylor Dent's 149-mile-per-hour blast or Milos Raonic's 147-mile-per-hour rocket, Roddick's mark still stands over 2 decades later. Interestingly, that 2004 season also saw him hit over 1,000 aces across all tournaments, a testament to his unmatched weapon. And if speed was Roddick's tool, the next story is about perfect consistency, year after year, under the brightest lights in New York. At number 2, most consecutive men's semifinals, Jimmy Connors. How do you even stay that good for over a decade? For Jimmy Connors, the answer was simple. You don't just play the US Open, you live it. From 1974 to 1985, Connors made the semifinals every single year, 12 consecutive deep runs across 3 different venues: Forest Hills grass, Hartrue clay, and Flushing Meadows hard courts, each with its own speed, bounce, and quirks. Think about it. In that span, he faced Björn Borg's ice-cold precision, John McEnroe's genius chaos, and Ivan Lendl's relentless baseline grind. He played through the switch from wood to graphite rackets, the introduction of night matches, and the roaring New York crowds that sometimes loved him, sometimes heckled him. And here's the kicker. Connors was 33 in his last semifinal of the streak, still diving for volleys like it was 74. Longevity? This was defiance in sneakers. The real question is, if Connors could do this, what about the one US Open record that might be even more untouchable? That's where we're heading next. Finally, at number 1, most consecutive men's titles, Roger Federer. Here's the twist. Federer's 5 US Open titles aren't just a total, they're all consecutive. In 127 years of the tournament, no other man has ever done it in the Open era. Even Pete Sampras, with 14 total slams, never won more than 2 US Opens in a row. Federer's run required surviving 27 straight match wins without injury, meltdown, or bad day, across half a decade. Consider the variables: shifting court speeds, changing opponents, extreme New York heat, and night session pressure in Arthur Ashe Stadium. And yet, year after year, Federer walked into the world's largest tennis arena and left with the trophy. His run ended in 2009 in a 5-set thriller against Juan Martín del Potro, a match that reminded fans just how fragile such streaks are. That's the thing with records like this. Once they're gone, you realize you may never see them again. And just when you think the history books are closed, another jaw-dropper is waiting in the wings. Your next match is already queued up right there on screen.